start coming in. Yeah, this camera, this whole like lighting and camera thing. Randall, do you have a question? I see your hand in the back.
No.
Oh.
Why not in the picture?
Are you trying to get audience participation?
Yeah, we just started the Hangout, so we are going to get started here in just a minute. Let's see. Oh, I don't know what I just did. All right, Thomas, I'm going to pass the presenter over to you, and I say we can get started.
Sounds good to me. And I should share a screen that is not the Hangout, I'm thinking.
So we've got 11 or 12 people in the room here, and it looks like maybe a couple people have joined online. I'll probably tweet it out here, maybe put it in Slack and see if we can get any more to join.
Sounds good.
See your screen.
All right. Are you guys ready to begin, or did you want to wait just till halfway through the hour?
I'd say go ahead.
All right. Welcome to Managing Azure with PowerShell. I'm Thomas Rayner. I'm a Microsoft MVP for Cloud and Data Center Management. I'm also an honorary scripting guy, which is an award that the Hey Scripting Guy blog gives out. Find me on Twitter, LinkedIn. I've got a blog where I write about lots of PowerShell and Azure Cloud stuff, and the slides and demo script. There's no demo script today. It's going to be almost all demo, but there's no script to follow. But you can find the slides if you're interested for this and other sessions that I do on my GitHub. I'm a Canadian. I'm in Edmonton right now. How is it down there? Are you guys cold right now, or are you far enough east that it's kind of warm?
We're in Cincinnati, and so it's the hottest day on record in February today. It got almost up to 80 degrees today, I think.
Yeah, I know. Kind of, it's like the eastern half of the continent is pretty warm, but the western half is cold as hell, which is what I've got the benefit of enjoying this week. So, not at all jealous. This isn't like a lecture or a conference thing. Like for the user groups, I usually enjoy a pretty casual relationship with the audience. Like this is largely for your guys' benefit. So if we're going over something too fast or too slow, I'm not necessarily familiar with your Azure experience or your PowerShell experience. You're a PowerShell user group, so there's some assumptions being made here, but feel free to ask questions or interrupt and ask us to loop back to something. And a lot of the demo today is going to be in a pretty casual, kind of colloquial, figuring it out as a group way of tackling business. So that's kind of my introduction. And just a quick word on scope that you guys should be aware of. In Azure, if you're not familiar, there's a classic and a resource manager deployment model. The classic model is almost like Azure version 1. And Resource Manager is Azure version 2. You can sort of think of them that way. Resource Manager is newer. It's where all the current development is. It's where most of the resources are. And it's what we're focusing on today. There's also a whole bunch of command line interfaces for working with Azure. There's the Cloud Shell that exists in PowerShell and Bash. There's the Azure CLI, which is somehow different than the Cloud Shell. And then there's the AzureRM PowerShell module. And when you look up managing Azure with PowerShell, you can get a variety of pages and information that spans all of these different items and more. Like, for instance, I think if you just look up Introduction to Azure PowerShell, you'll get stuff related to the Cloud Shell managing the Resource Manager deployment model. But we're focused on fancy animations. We're focused on the Resource Manager and the AzureRM PowerShell module today. That's, in my experience, in my day-to-day, this is something that I use a lot. This is a tool set that I work in for probably about anywhere between 1/3 and 50% of my day every day at work. And it's, in my opinion, probably the most flexible way of managing your Azure resources. And it doesn't mean that any of this other stuff is bad. It doesn't mean that it doesn't have its place. It just means it's not what I'm showing you today. And with that said, let's just get in and demo some stuff, because I think that'll probably be a little easier than watching a whole bunch of slides. Like I kind of alluded to, and like the slide kind of says, the whole demo aspect here is supposed to be really casual, and I'm going to show you sort of like how, if you didn't really know what you were doing, here's how you could kind of figure it out, because I don't know, in my opinion, it's not super useful to see everything go smoothly. It's more useful to see someone figure something out, because when you're doing it for the first time, it doesn't always go smoothly. I know it doesn't for me, at least. And so we'll look at a few things, and we'll tackle a couple of problems, and then maybe we'll get some feedback from you guys about the type of things that you'd like to see, and we can build off of that and see where it takes us. So I have my shell set up. I've got a couple versions of the AzureRM PowerShell module installed, and just a word on my prompt. This is vanilla PowerShell. It's just in conemu, so it's got tabs at the top where I can have more than one tab. And my prompt has a couple things in it, just the line number for the execution. This is the nested depth drive folder, the time that the last command took to execute, and my current local time. So just so when you see that, it's I'm not using some weird crazy editor. This is all code that exists in my profile. I'm not trying to pull one over on you guys and have some weird stuff set up that you're not going to get to use. It is just regular PowerShell. But if you're not familiar with the PowerShell module, you can find module name AzureRM unfamiliar keyboard. Hello. How'd you freeze? Live demos are the best. Oh, I probably don't have the package management imported.
You don't have IntelliSense? Is that what it is?
No, I do. It's not responding to me right now. I think the package management is just figuring itself out. There we go, repository. The latest version of the AzureRM module, the one that we're looking at, is 5.3.0. I just downloaded it today, so I'm pretty sure I know I got the latest, but I just want to show you here. Wow, this is slow. This must be my wireless. There we go. And so installing it is like any other module. I'm not going to go through that because it's a pretty large module. But the AzureRM module itself is kind of a funny animal. It's not necessarily something that you want to import all on its own. Like normally when you want to get started with these things, you would go and do something like import module AzureRM. And I've already done that, so it's not going to take very long. But you don't want to do that when you're working with the Azure PowerShell modules necessarily, and I'll show you why. If we do a get module Azure, oops. Look at where it's stored. Well, I guess I could have just changed that. There's nothing really in here. Like every function that exists and every commandlet that exists for the AzureRM module isn't in one PSM1 file that's only a few, that's not a very long file. And if we check it out, I'll go code. This is all this thing does. Make this a little bigger. Control scroll. No. There's a little easier to see. This is the entire AzureRM module. And it's pretty clear that it just imports a whole bunch of submodules. It'll import Azure. Sorry? Oh, it'll import AzureRM profile, it'll storage, analytics. It's got sub-modules for basically every element of Azure. As I'm scrolling through here, you can see there's probably not a good reason to import all of this stuff at once unless you're not really sure what you're looking for. But you can search through all the commandlets without having to actually import the entire thing. On my system, when I just run a vanilla import AzureRM, it takes about 8 minutes just to import that module, to go through and import all these other modules, and to go through and do any startup scripts, to check for PowerShell 5 and do some stuff, and perform some of these filtered commands. That's what the entire module is. It's not necessarily something that's useful to bring the entire thing in all on its own. So what you typically end up doing is searching, like, you kind of know what you're looking for a little bit. Let's first log into Azure is probably something that'll be fun for us to do. We can search for verbs for connect, for add in the AzureRM module. And I've got some mistyping there, but get command, we can just search for things like add. And then we get all the AzureRM commands that have the add verb. And you can see that they're all in different modules. This one for add AzureRM account is in the AzureRM.profile module. And you can go through, and this is going to be everything for adding all types of new Azure resources. But as fate would have it, the first one we're looking for is add AzureRM account. And that's going to get us started just logging in. So we'll go add AzureRM account. And there are some parameters you can specify, but I'm not going to do that today. Oops. And we'll see if it prompts me for MFA or not. It does not. So that's me logged into Azure. I've got the module installed. I've got it imported. I found the add AzureRM account command. And if I just do a get module, I don't have everything loaded. I don't have all of these different modules imported. I don't have the entire, well, in my case, I do have the entire AzureRM module loaded, but all those sub-modules are not loaded because I don't need them. In order to log in, all I need is the AzureRM.profile module. So when I log in, I get a little bit of information, my account, subscription name, ID, tenant ID, environment. And if you're used to working in Azure in the web portal, you'll know that moving in between subscriptions is not really a big deal. Most of the visualizations that you have will show you resources or will show you activities from a whole bunch of different subscriptions all in one go. And that's not really what you get in the Azure PowerShell experience. So the command get AzureRM subscription will show me all of the different subscriptions that I've got in the tenant that I'm logged into, in the account that I'm logged into right now. I've got my MVP MSDN playground, and I've got another Microsoft Azure sponsorship. When I logged in, you could see that the subscription name that it has me associated with right now is this MSDN playground. That's not the one I want to use. So I'll introduce you to the concept of select AzureRM subscription. And it has a few parameters that you can supply. A lot of these are optional. You can pipe in an entire subscription object. You can specify which tenant. You can give a subscription, which is what I'm going to do in this case. And I'm just going to give it my Microsoft Azure sponsorship. And as it does that, it's going to switch my my context from working in resources that exist in this MSDN account to working with resources that exist in this Azure sponsorship subscription. So where the portal is a lot like you're able just to look at everything you want all in one go. In the PowerShell experience, in the AzureRM module, you have to be selected or otherwise explicit about what subscription that you're working with. So if you were to run a command against all of the virtual machines you can see, like if you were to do something like get AzureRM VM, or you were otherwise searching for different resources that you have available to you, the subscription that you're in and looking at using select AzureRM subscription is going to matter and limit what you're able to do. And so it's easy to get tripped up on that. If you go, well, I know I've got a dev subscription, or I've got an HR subscription and a finance subscription and a sales subscription, and I want to do something to all of their domain controllers that they have in Azure, then you'll have to go through each subscription and do that separately, or come up with another way of addressing those resources. So that's something that you can get tripped up on a little bit, and is a little bit of a difference if you're used to the online portal. If you're looking for help, if you're not sure where to go, I had a note here. I wanted to shout this out earlier. The PowerShell Slack has an Azure channel that's really valuable. The people who are responsible for administering and creating and using the AzureRM PowerShell module hang out here and often respond to people. So if you have something you're not satisfied with, or you have a technical question that you can't find help for online, you definitely want to come into this Slack and see what's going on. There's our friend now. But if you go to, what's the link? I think it is slack.poshcode.org. And you can invite yourself to this Slack network and join the Azure channel. And this is largely all about administering AzureRM PowerShell. Another great place, if you are dissatisfied in some way with how things are going for you, you can find all of the source code on GitHub. There we go. I don't remember the links to any of this stuff. I just Google it all the time. GitHub/Azure/Azure PowerShell. This is all of the stuff that you need to know if you want to open an issue against something that's not working like you think it should, or you want to fix something and see it work better in the future, you can do that. Also, all of the documentation is available there too. So if I'm looking up add AzureRM account, obviously I can use get help for this, but it's going to show me the same content as what's on this online place. It's just docs.microsoft.com, like everything else you guys are familiar with. If you've ever looked up different commandlets in PowerShell, you've probably found yourself here. But if we're going, here's example 4. Well, that doesn't work like it should work. That's a lie. It's not right. And I know how it's supposed to work. You can click the edit button, and I'm not logged into GitHub right now, so that's not going to work. But you can perform a fork, a commit, and a pull request to get your edits to their documents back in, all in the browser. And it's very straightforward, very simple, like editing a Word document or a Google Doc or something in your browser. Pardon me. So you can search here. I usually just use Google to search, and I prefer looking at the documentation in the web browser more than I prefer looking at it in PowerShell. Like you can go get, I'll add AzureRM account, and you can look at it here, and maybe we can even go full, and you'll see this looks a lot like it looks in the web browser. And this is fine if you're just noodling around with the shell. You guys know how to get help and sift through it, but I just prefer all of the stuff on docs.microsoft.com. Syntax highlighting goes a long way, etc. So I'm not going to berate this one because you guys are probably familiar, but all of the documentation for the AzureRM module is on docs.microsoft.com. It's not like that with every Microsoft product, obviously, but this one is. And the AzureRM module is maintained and distributed by Microsoft, so it is something that's officially supported. Another thing that you should be aware of is when you're working in the Azure PowerShell module, all it's really doing is activities against an API. It's all just interacting with the Azure API. So oftentimes you'll get inconsistent experiences that you may not expect. Like you'll go, oh, that's not a PowerShell best practice. And the reason for that may be because it's not intended for PowerShell. It's just the Azure API in the background. So occasionally you can bump into some stuff that's a little bit funky, but typically you'll be able to get some advice on the Slack channel, or you'll be able to see maybe somebody's already opened an issue for that, or you'll otherwise just work around it. Also, yeah, this is not Azure AD. Like there's separate modules for Azure AD and Office 365. There's another way to connect to Exchange Online. This is largely just for Azure on its own. So far, so good. All right. So that's sort of the very, very 100 level. Here's how you get in. Now, if I wanted to take a look at some of the things that I have, I don't know, let's make a new Azure automation account in a runbook and get some code running on an automated schedule. Are you guys at all familiar with Azure automation? If you're not, it's sort of like System Center Orchestrator or Task Scheduler, in so much as it is a way that you can declare code and then have it run on a schedule, and you can grant access to some cloud resources and perform some other activities there as well. So for Azure automation, I'm going to take a quick look at my get command. I'm just going to go AzureRM automation, and let's just take a look and see if I can first identify what module it's all in. And so I got a whole bunch of commands here. I've got these gets and imports and news, and it's all in the AzureRM.automation module. So that's probably the one I'm going to want to import. So first, let's just go in. Oh, come here. And same thing if I go get command module AzureRM. All the stuff in the Azure automation. So there's obviously you guys have already seen modules for every corner of Azure. And so when I just want to work with the Azure automation one, I just have to import the Azure automation module and I can start working with that. I can take a look and go get AzureRM automation account and see what's currently there. I can see, oh, I've got one for this Pluralsight report I did. I made a course on Azure automation that's going live sometime this month, I hope. And then I've got just some test zone here as well. These accounts are basically containers for different automation resources. So why don't I make a new resource group? That's pretty easy. And I'm going to just go new AzureRM resource group. I'm just kind of guessing on the command here. I can even just go get help if I want to see the syntax for it first and see how this works. I know this is the command. Let's just go examples. I can create an empty resource group. That's probably what I want to do. I can create a resource group using the positional parameters. There's not a whole bunch here. I can specify tags. Let's just go new AzureRM resource group name. Cincy. Move that up a bit. -RG, so I know it's a resource group. And location. And you may or may not know, you can, oh, I think you could. Yeah, you can tab complete these locations as well. So to do that, I'm using PS Readline. It's default in PowerShell 5. I'm going to go in Control Space, and it's showing me all of the different valid values for what comes next. If I was just going to tab my way through, Central US, East Asia, Southeast Asia, East US, that's what I'm seeing here. It's kind of tabbing through all of these things for me until I pick one. So I'm just going to put it in, let's put it in West US. I think that's the geographically closest one to me. And that should be all I need, right? Enter. A little bit of feedback here saying that here's the name of the resource group, here's where it is. It was successfully deployed, and here's the resource ID. These resource IDs are canonical, so they start at a root, and then there's everything belongs to a subscription. So you get the subscriptions next, and then this is the ID of my Azure sponsorship subscription. Like if we look at get AzureRM, we get a list of those again. Come on. Ending in F67. Here's the F67. This is the ID for the subscription that's a part of. And then the type of resource that it comes in, the resource groups are just a resource groups type, and then the name of the resource group. If we're working with other types of resources, you'll see these are a little different because you'll also see which resource group they're in. So let's make an automation account and look at that next. We'll go. Let's look at again all the commands that exist in my list here. I'm probably just looking for the new stuff. I can just go verb new. I'm gonna go probably new AzureRM automation account. I can look through the rest of these and see if they make sense too. Do I want a new certificate, connection, module? Probably not. Let's just go new, or let's go get help. New AzureRM automation account. See what we get. And we get my prompt messed up. Let's try that again. Just like before, let's look at our examples because those are always easier to go through. Only one example. It's pretty straightforward, isn't it? So new AzureRM automation account, name, give it a name, location, give it a resource group. So nothing earth-shattering here. New AzureRM automation account. Name, let's name it AA. Location. US. They need to be capitalized. I need to give it a resource group name. I'm just going to give it the one that we just did. That's why you use tab completion on the locations. Oh, I'm limited here. I can't create an automation account in every single geographical location in every Azure region. So we'll just go with Canada Central. So you guys kind of on board with what we're doing? It's kind of tough when it's a remote session. I can't really read the room. Is a bunch of glazed over eyes? Is anyone falling asleep? Is anyone not really sure what we're doing? If you're not familiar with Azure, I'm sorry, I missed that.
I said we are studying your screen intently. So if it's not available in all the locations, does that mean it's like something that's just slowly rolling out to more and more locations, or is this fully baked? This is just only the locations it's going to be in.
Good question. It's different depending on what you're looking at, and some of it can be conditional for your actual arrangement with Microsoft and your subscriptions. In this case, automation accounts have been generally available for some time, and they're done. They're always being improved. They're getting feature updates, and they're being worked on as time goes on. But they're not beta. They're available, and they've just made a strategic decision to only make them available in certain regions, and so that can be a little bit of a stumbling block sometimes. But that stumbling block exists in the web portal as well when you're looking through the drop down of resources. Whether you do or don't see the region there is sort of Microsoft's discretion. And honestly, I'm not really sure why this isn't a feature that's rolled out everywhere, but you can sort of see in the error that was thrown, the location not available for resource type, because I'm trying to create a new automation account. That's the type of resource I'm trying to make. The provided location West US is not available. List of available regions are here. Japan, East US 2, West Europe, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not 100% sure that could be a reflection of the fact that I'm on a sponsored subscription right now, or that might just be where they're available. I can't honestly remember off the top of my head because it's most of my stuff just goes in the Canadian data centers as it is. But good question. So I was able to create a new automation account in the Canada Central location, and I get the subscription ID, the resource group name, automation account name. This is basically just returning an Azure automation account object. So if I were to go get AzureRM automation account now, we ran that before, and we had the Pluralsight report 1 and the test zone report 1, and now we've also got our demonstration one here listed as well. So they're all in the same subscription. These two are in the same resource group, these two here that I highlighted, and this one's in its own. So I can also obviously go resource group name, and I can isolate that one on its own. Like these honestly, the Azure RM commands in some ways remind me a lot of the Active Directory commands, just in that you can get a whole bunch of stuff or you can get an individual, and it works that way for pretty much every object. You can either get a big list of stuff or you can specify some more parameters and get what you're actually looking for. I'm going to do a couple things here and just set up some, actually, no, I don't have to do that. If we had longer resource group and automation account names, I'd assign them to variables, but these should be pretty easy. So what I'm trying to do here is the architecture for, I don't really have a good whiteboarding utility, so guess what time it is? And I'm using a mouse that I don't usually use either. So in Azure, everything kind of belongs to a subscription. Come here. Give me my. Nope. I had a.
You could probably type. You could probably put a text box if it's easier.
Probably could. That would be much smarter.
I think it's the A right next to the pencil.
Yes, it is. This is quickly becoming not worth it. Yeah, okay. Sorry about that. Everything belongs to a subscription, and inside of those subscriptions, everything belongs to resource groups. So you can see I've already selected the subscription that I'm working in, and I've already created a resource group that's going to hold all of the logical resources that we create in Azure, whether they're automation accounts or maybe I need some storage set up or I need a virtual machine that I'm going to make. It's all going to go into this Cincy-RG resource group for us in this demo. And they're just logical containers. Think of them like folders on a workstation. They don't really do anything on their own other than logically separate and help you organize different resources.
So,
and
Thomas,
yep.
Just quick question. Does it matter then if your resource group is in one location and the automation account is in another? I'm guessing not.
No, the resource groups can exist pretty much anywhere. For different types of resources, it'll be important that they're in the same location, and for others, it'll be important that they're in different locations. For some of the availability set stuff, if you're setting up, if you're saying these two virtual machines are in a cluster and I need them not to both get patched at the same time, then you may want to set them up in different locations, or you may want to find some way of making them geographically redundant otherwise. Typically, if you're being allowed to do it, then you're just fine. It doesn't, like for this one, the resource group was in, where was it, West US, and the automation account is in Canada Central. Doesn't really matter. I can address all my resources in different geographic locations all at once. And so in this resource group, I'm going to make an automation account, which is a special kind of container just for Azure Automation. And it's going to hold my automation-related resources like runbooks, and I might make some variables or items related just to Azure Automation. So I've got this automation account, and you know what? We need some code that we can use here. Let's go get random. XIM 7. And that's going to be our example. That's going to be the code that we want to actually have run in Azure Automation. So we'll go import. Let's take a look here. So I know the resource that I want to create is called an automation runbook. So I'll go get command again. AzureRM automation runbook. And so there's a whole lot of things I can do with runbooks. And this is assuming some knowledge about how Azure Automation works. But I can export them, I can get the schedules. We're getting them all back from this automation module. I know for a fact the one that I want right now is import AzureRM automation runbook. So rather than look it up there, let's look at some examples online. Maybe I should zoom this a little bit. Or more specifically, I should zoom this tab a little. Let's just jump down to the examples. Import AzureRM automation runbook. So it looks like it takes a path that is my physical, or my on-prem location, some tags, a resource group, and an automation account name, and then the type. And it's only got the one example. It goes right into parameters after that. So let's see if we can just kind of tab complete our way through it. Import AzureRM automation runbook. In the path of C temp, was it dice roll? There we go. And we can add a description is the next thing it wants.
Tom, Thomas, in the example, it looked like that file had a different extension. So is this always just a PowerShell script, or?
That is a good question. The different languages, actually, I'll show you in here. Let me just quickly give it a name of dice roll, and then type is the parameter that you guys were looking at there, which corresponds also to the extension of the file that we're looking at, because you'll notice it was a .graph runbook, and the type was graphical PowerShell. In Azure Automation, there are some special types of files that are able to be run, which I'm not trying to get too deep into, but you can have a graphical one, PowerShell. It's kind of messing with my tab completion here. But PowerShell Python 2 is available. Let me just tab. This. Import. There we go. So there are a bunch of different types, and I address them a little bit in my Pluralsight course, so I'm not able to go a whole real deep dive into this, but you can declare PowerShell runbooks graphically in a graphical editor that I can show you real quick. And then you can declare them in PowerShell or PowerShell workflow, or also in Python. So we'll power through this example real quick, and then I can show you a couple of those if you guys are still interested. But this is a PowerShell runbook. The path was temp. So many awful files in my temp drive. Description. Name. Control. I don't want to give it any tags right now. I don't need any log stuff. Published will make this published. And resource group name is CincyRG. Automation account name. So I can kind of glean some of this from the example we were looking at, where the type I know I need, the automation account name I know I need, and resource group name as well. From a little bit of experience, I sort of know which ones. I know that tags are optional. In that they're optional when you're doing it through the Azure portal as well. Just because you're doing something in a different way of accessing it doesn't necessarily mean that you do or don't have to be aware of changes to what's required or not. It's pretty standard. So if I import this, cross your fingers for no horrible typos.
And Thomas, the tags, are those, is that key value pairs that is it hash table?
Excuse me. Yeah, they work just like they do in, maybe it's easy to show you in the actual portal as well. I'll just log in real quick and then I'll zoom this in a bit. Suddenly I'm very scared that they didn't ask me for MFA. But if we are in here now and let's just search for that automation account we made. And if we come into the run books, we see the dice roll run book is there. If we click on it, there's these tags. And this exists for every Azure resource that exists. And you can give them arbitrary names and values. So you can give it purpose, HR, and then it gets a purpose tag with the value of HR. You can give it build. They can even have spaces. Build to add these tags. This is a mechanism of Azure that just you can give them tags upon creation as well. You can see that there's no tags here, but if I go get AzureRM automation run book, oh, not rub book, look up the name with dice roll, and you would think that I could just run this, but there's other mandatory parameters. I'm being prompted for the resource group name and the automation account name. Typically, you're not going to get an error. You're just going to get mandatory parameters that are being shown to you. And then I get my tags here. So if I go back and I don't know if you guys can see the Google Hangouts thing that's telling me that I'm broadcasting or not. So
Yeah, I think you can hide it if you really want.
yeah, you're probably right. There we go. It's easy. And I'm just going to assign this to a variable so we don't have to keep getting it. But if I just go dice.tags, then I just get my key value pair. And I can do things like, and I believe it's set AzureRM automation runbook. The name is dice roll. I don't need to, and I can add a tag here. I can go and do something like PowerShell semicolon. Here's the equals. And the tag is obsolete. In the future, it'll be broken. That's interesting.
Oh, tag and tags.
Well, it's telling me tags is going to be removed, but I use tag. But I use the right one. Interesting. But see what I've done here is I've overwritten the value. If we go back and look at the tags here, I've overwritten. I've said from PS is yes. You guys just saw what happened there. I could append to this as well if I wanted to, but usually that would involve doing something like taking dice.tags and going .add something. And dice is just, this is the stored value. This isn't what's actually live. And so I could do something like that and then go set AzureRM automation. Oops.
Can you do a dice.tags and pipe that to get member? I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's It's going to do some unrolling for me though. So if we do a get type first,
Yeah.
it is it's going to show you that it's a hash table, and it's really confusing to work with sometimes. The tags are actually worked with as though they were an array of individual hash tables when you're working with them in some of the different PowerShell commandlets, which is a really deep rabbit hole that I don't necessarily want to get too deep into. It's mostly when you're looking at adding stuff to it or performing other activities. As we will go in, like so we have this dice.tags. This is just a hash table now. We could use this in our set Azure RM automation, not account, runbook. Name dice. Yeah, dice roll. Resource group name. We can just go dice.resource group name. And then, so for our tags, we can just give it this dice.tags and get our warning again, and then see that we've appended it effectively that way. So there's not really a clean way of appending just using the commandlets itself. And I know we're just looking at the Azure automation stuff right now, but it works this way pretty much everywhere you want to look at tags. It does not, by default, want to help you by appending or doing anything like that. And there's no parameter, there's no flag or switch that allows you to do it. So often you're doing kind of like I just did, which is doing a get, and doing that dice equals and doing the get Azure automation runbook so that you can have a record of what the tags are, append one to it, and then put it back up. Lots of other systems and PowerShell modules that you might deal with, like export CSV. Like you can do export CSV, path, C, amp, and this will overwrite whatever I'm working with, or I can use the append flag, and then it'll just append onto that file. We don't get that with a lot of the Azure modules and a lot of the stuff that we're working with. So be aware of that. So you can inadvertently do what I did the first time, which was just assign a tag to the resource and then overwrite everything that's there. And that's not fun. So I've got, we can look at this in the portal as well. I've got my runbook here. It's been published. And so what I probably want to do now is actually schedule it to run. And so how would I even do that? Let's take a look at command, AzureRM, automation sched. Let's just go with that because I'm so good at spelling. There's new Azure RM automation schedule I probably want. And then probably right after that, I'm going to want the register Azure RM automation scheduled runbook. Because I've got to do two things. I've got to make a schedule and I've got to associate it to a runbook. So I can do my old get help register. Examples. And again, just one example of here's the account name, here's the name of the schedule I want to, or sorry, here's the name of the runbook I want to do. Here's the schedule name. So I got to create the schedule before I can actually register this the schedule. Scheduling is going to be a bit interesting to look at.
If it's anything like Task Scheduler, it's more complicated.
Yeah, so it kind of is. Let me show you in the portal first, so it'll be a little bit more relatable. Just what kind of making a new schedule looks like, the type of options that you have. So I have name, etc. Starts. When is it going to run for the first time? What's the time zone? And if it's just going to run once, that's fine. But I want a recurring schedule. And look at the overwhelming buffet of options that are available to me now. I can recur every 1 hour. I can recur every 1 day, week, or month. If I go something like day, every 1 month, I can get, do I want it to go on the 3rd of the month, or do I want it to go on the second Friday of the month? And it gets a little bit crazy like that. On week, I can do which days I want it to go. And so as you kind of look through some of these examples, they're using other variables and everything as well. Like this is the example for a new AzureRM automation schedule. Create a one-time schedule in the local time. So this is just no recurrence. And then here's what we actually want. Create a new recurring schedule. Here's the start time, end time. It's going to go for a year. And then they give you a pretty vanilla example. If we look at the online documentation, there shouldn't be a whole bunch of surprises here either. But what we will get is introduced to all the different parameters that we're not using. So here's our example 1 and example 2. That doesn't really help. But we can see that there's a day interval if we wanted to go how many days, hour interval and how many hours, month interval, so every 1 month. And as we keep going, where is it? Week interval, and here's our optional parameters. Day of week, so is it going on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday? Day of week occurrence, so is it going on the second Friday? This is sort of all of the different translations. I don't want to beat you guys to death with how this particular commandlet works, but just because we're talking about Azure automation, you can't really get away from seeing that. So we'll go new AzureRM automation schedule, and we'll name it Go Hourly. Actually, no, we'll go. Am I tab completing that? Well, minutely. Well, so the start time will be in right now. The description will be run, excuse me, every minute. Pardon me. And I'm just tab completing here. Days of week, I don't want that. Days of month. I want something that'll give me different interval. Did I have anything for minutes? First, start time must be 5 minutes in the future. I'll show you that error though. I guess it can't go lower than an hour. But I could go more than that. But I can, let's just set it to recur every hour then. And resource group name is the same resource group name we've been using this whole time. And days of week, hour interval, we'll say will be every 1 hour. Or you know what, let's just try and see if this will work. We'll say it'll go every 0.5 hours, see if it'll take a non-whole number there. Expire time, time zone, I don't care. Let's just use the defaults and see what we get. So I expect this to error out for a couple of reasons. Well, hour interval, the 0 argument is less than the minimum allowed range of 1. Well, I guess we're going to have to make that 1. Let's try it again. And, oh, it still doesn't like me because it's saying that the start time of the schedule must be at least 5 minutes after the time you create the schedule. So that's just a quirk of Azure PowerShell, or not Azure PowerShell, sorry, Azure Automation Schedules. So we'll add minutes, we'll make it a whole 6 minutes. And now I have a new schedule. And it goes now until this may as well be forever, I guess, is their line of thinking. And so if I want this thing to actually run, I have to go do that register. And what does it need? Runbook name, dice, roll, schedule name. What do we name that? Go, hourly. Parameters doesn't take any. Run on it doesn't need any. Resource group name, automation account name. You'll notice yourself supplying resource group names pretty much in every single command you ever run. And in Azure Automation, because they're all inside automation accounts, you'll put them there as well. And then I think that should be it. And now, there we go. We have our thing scheduled to run every hour, starting in 6 minutes from now. So rather than make you guys wait around, what if we wanted to just trigger the thing manually? So we can do a get command, probably a start runbook. Start Azure RM automation runbook. That's probably what we're looking for, isn't it? So we'll go start Azure RM automation runbook. Oops. Name, dice, role, parameters. And the thing will run. And if I want to verify that, get Azure RM automation job. We can see that the thing ran. We can get the output and stuff as well, but I don't want to give you guys a whole lecture on Azure Automation. This is supposed to be about managing pretty much any Azure resource that you want to get your hands dirty on. And this is just sort of showing the exploration of how some of this stuff works. Some of the useful commands that you might wonder, like if you're trying to address a group of resources, you would typically think you could go get Azure RM resource, and then kind of tab complete your way through it, resource ID, name, type. And that's good if you know exactly what you're looking for. Like, let's take that resource ID. Did I just have one nearby? Can't remember. That may have been longer ago than I thought it was. But if you have the ID there, that's fine. And this will get you a resource that you're explicitly looking for. But I want to show you find Azure RM resource is actually a little bit better for that, because not only does it give you things like resource type, this is a lot better for searching when you don't know exactly what you're looking for. Get Azure RM resource is good when you know the exact type, the exact ID. But I can go resource name contains Cincy. And there I've got my automation account, and I've got the runbook because the resource name has the automation account as part of it. If I was just doing get Azure RM resource, oh, that wasn't it. And I can kind of look through here and see if there's maybe name. Is there like a filter? Not really. But I know the name is, oh, that doesn't work. Resource name is, well, it's not even the right name parameters. I need to give it more than that. Resource type, oh, I don't know. I just want to find this stuff. It can be pretty frustrating for a newcomer to fiddle around with get Azure RM resource and not find what they're looking for, going, this is useless, this is a pain in the ass, this is completely out to lunch, why would I want to try to get my stuff this way? Because it's not very intuitive that get is for when you know exactly what you're looking for, and find is for when you're trying to actually search and discover. And that's a big tripping point that I see a lot of people getting stuck on kind of out of the gate. And falling down on, because they're going, well, I want to find all my virtual machines, or I know that I named everything kind of like this. And for a lot of the different types of resources, like you saw, I got Azure RM automation account. And that's great if I know that I'm, I mistyped it. That's great if I know that I'm looking for Azure RM automation accounts. But if I'm not sure that maybe I'm looking for a key vault and I don't know what the exact name of that is, or I'm looking for an IoT hub and I don't know what the exact commandlet for that is, and I can kind of find my way through it using get command, or you can just use find AzureRM resource and look for the resource name contains. There were other ones as well. There were resource name equal. So this will search across a whole bunch of different stuff. You can get all the different types of, that's not what I wanted. I went get AzureRM automation account. I was just trying to get a type up there really easily. But there's all types of different things that you can put into there. There we go. You can search and look for stuff that have specific tags associated to them. So what was one of the tags that we stuck on my resource? We can look for stuff that has the, oh, come here. Stuff that has the purpose tag name, purpose. And there it found all the stuff that was tagged that way. And that's a really effective way of locating stuff as well. Here's I'll grab this type and I can go find AzureRM resource type. Oh, fantastic. There's all my automation accounts. I'm just looking for that type of resource. Some of the syntax will become a little more familiar to you. Like, how did I know that was a resource? Well, it's because I've been screwing with it for a while and I've bumped into this before. And this is just a type of resource, and it'll show you resource type, Microsoft automation accounts. Why is it plural? Who the hell knows? They're not all plural. It would be awesome if they were consistent. But let me consult my list. That's the vast majority of kind of what I had on a checklist to show you, was just sort of the process of discovering commands and the process of kind of fumbling through them to create stuff. If you're going to work in the Azure PowerShell module, it helps to have a foundational knowledge of what you actually want to accomplish. The thing is really vast. Like if we just do a get command, AzureRM account, it should be over 3,000. Oh, let me do it in a clean window where I don't have anything imported yet. That's weird. I'm missing something, but like thousands of commands, all related to dealing with different Azure resources. And you saw all the different modules that exist that get imported if you just import the AzureRM module. And so, oh, you know what it was? They don't all have RM in there. Over 3,000 different commands. So I showed you maybe a dozen, 2 dozen different commands, and a lot of them were related to Azure automation. But the same process is kind of followed in other areas. The portal is probably a little bit better for noodling around. Like if you know PowerShell really well, but you don't have any idea what's going on in Azure, it may still be even beneficial to kind of poke around in Azure and see exactly what you're trying to do. Do some reading, take a Pluralsight course, whatever method of learning works best for you. There's lots of recorded stuff on YouTube. I'm sure, is anyone going to the PowerShell and DevOps Summit?
One.
In April? Yeah. So you'll probably be hard-pressed to not learn anything about Azure and PowerShell if you attend that. And all those sessions, I think they're planning on recording those as well. But the point I'm making is if you don't know what's going on in Azure, period, it's not going to be really easy to figure it out in the PowerShell module, because it's built for people who are administering the service. Kind of like how if you don't know what you want to do in Active Directory, you're going to have a hard time doing it in PowerShell. If you don't know what you want to do in SCCM, you're going to have a hard time doing it in their PowerShell module. So it can be a little bit easier to kind of fumble through and bounce around in the portal if you're brand new to Azure. But if you've got even a little bit of Azure experience and some decent PowerShell fundamentals, you can do a whole lot to administer these things using PowerShell. And it comes with all the benefits of you're in a PowerShell user group, you probably already know that. Why do you want to use PowerShell? Well, so you can automate this stuff so that you don't have to run it in the console while you're sitting in front of it, so that you can package it up and give it to your help desk, so that you can have a task that runs it at 3 a.m., so that you can run it against 67 different virtual machines at once, et cetera, et cetera. If I wanted to apply tags to 300 different virtual machines, would I rather go through and click them all in the portal, or would I rather run a couple of PowerShell commands to do it? So all of the core tenets of automation and why PowerShell is a good thing exist, and are really just extended into the Azure world. So that's sort of, I think I even have a couple more slides. Lessons learned, these are borrowed from somewhere else. You don't need super good PowerShell prowess to use it. You just kind of need the fundamentals and the getting started learning stuff. You need to know a little bit about Azure, though. If you've got repetitive tasks, same thing for automation. Web portal is easy to explore. This is a slide stolen from another presentation. And that's sort of all I've got prepared, but I don't have anything to go run away and do. So if you guys have any questions or want to chat about this or anything else, PowerShell, automation, Azure, IT related, I'm here and willing to chat. If you have a different kind of workload that you'd like to see figured out in PowerShell, we can do that too. Otherwise, I'll turn the floor back over to you guys. Were there any questions accumulated as we went through?
I didn't see any in the chats, but I can open the room up for some questions.
Yeah.
Thomas, hopefully you can hear me. A lot of Microsoft's products, when you want to automate things in them, they'll kind of give you hints, like some of the consoles give you hints on like maybe what a PowerShell command or script would be to perform the same action that you're doing in the GUI. Does the Azure portal give you any of that? Does it kind of point you in the direction you might need to go if you want to automate, a particular, like building a VM or something like that?
A little bit. Provisioning resources is a little bit of a special case in Azure just in general. There's a lot of different ways of tackling that. In so much as they're named the same thing, like I know I want to make an Azure automation account. I know that I want to work with a runbook. Like if we go back and look at the GUI portal for these runbooks, and I say, okay, I want to make a new runbook. If I click on this, do I want to import an existing runbook or do I want to create a new one? And I can, if I'm familiar with this, I can sort of explore and go, oh, here, I need to upload a file, and this is going to sort of look the same as the parameters that we were filling out when we were using import AzureRM automation runbook. I got to go pick a file, judge me all you like for dice roll here. Pick the runbook type. It did some auto detection based on the file name. They can be in Python or graphical. I'll show you the graphical editor. It's exciting. The name and such, and then you click create. And then knowing that I want to import a runbook allows me to go back into the console and go get command import runbook, and even just supply as vague an example as that, and I still only get one back. And obviously that is also something I could Google pretty easily, is just import a runbook into Azure Automation. So it doesn't give you, like I know in like the Active Directory, there's a graphical element for that. You can literally click on a button and see the PowerShell that's being executed in the background. And this isn't so overt, it isn't so obvious like that, but by picking up on the naming scheme and kind of the nomenclature of what everything is sort of laid out as, you can sort of piece that together on your own. Do you guys want to see the graphical editor?
Sure.
Yeah, I know that. I know when Dave Wilson was working on some of the UI stuff, that they were experimenting with the potential to put like a button, that says, show me the PowerShell, for this action.
Yeah, and that would be awesome.
I don't think that ever made it to GA.
I'm not sure. Hopefully he makes that a spare time project. He's actually working, where's he? GitHub now. He's working on the Atom editor. But here's the graphical runbook interface. So you can kind of scroll through and see, here's all the modules. Let's just look for write output. And then I can add that to Canvas. And I can configure the parameters. This is a lot of fun. I don't recommend doing it. Okay, quick. What I need an input object that I'm going to write out. What type do I want it to be? Like when you're in PowerShell, you just go write output hi, and it goes, right? So in some way, this is easier. If I want to go write, it needs to be a constant value of hi. We'll do that. And now this is just the hello world of graphical runbooks. I'll go into our test pane and just run it. And this always takes longer when you're waiting for it. I think you can assume, yeah, look, it said hi. Now, what gets really fun is, let's do a get random. We'll add this to the canvas. Just so let's start building a little logic, shall we? Let's configure our get random. Choose a parameter set. What the hell? Maximum. Let's say, okay, our maximum is okay, constant value of 7. Then our minimum is constant value of 1. This is our dice roll. Again, we're building this. This is arguably more convenient for people who are new to PowerShell to kind of do it this way. And now, well, let's just see what the hell happens here. Let's go test pane and then start. And what do you think will happen? Will my output go first, or will my get random go first? Get random went first. And why do you think that is? It's because it's higher up on the screen. And I can connect these two. What does that do? That's the pipeline. And I can either make it a for each loop, or I can make it a regular pipe, and I can make it an if. So I can kind of come back here, and somehow I can probably assign this to a variable. Just go.
This looks like some interns work on the
Yeah,
run game.
I don't love this if that's not apparent, and I honestly don't even want to show it to you anymore. But there's neat stuff you can do in Azure Automate. I'm pretty passionate about it. I've done 2 Pluralsight courses on it now. The PowerShell is obviously flexible and useful and can be a very powerful tool, which is what I just spent the last hour showing you. PowerShell workflow is not PowerShell, but is very similar to it. It's also defined in code. This graphical one and this graphical PowerShell workflow, I don't like them. I think they're crap. And I don't think that's how you should be coding in an enterprise environment. However, they're in here. And I've never seen them used anywhere else, but here they are. And then Python 2, I guess they made the strategic decision not to include Python 3 as well, but it's in preview, so you can do a Python one. An interesting thing here is if you do a Python one, it pre-populates with some code. And so there's working with Azure resources in Python, and as well as an SDK. So you can do print and remember at the last moment frantically if that's the Python 2 or 3 syntax. I don't think I need brackets. Completed. Hello world, look, we did it. And so if you wanted to write in Python instead, maybe you're coming from a Linux, Azure, Python kind of world, and you've bought a company or you've moved to a new role where you're using Azure Automation and you really want to use Python and you don't care if it's in beta or not, then maybe this is a quicker way for you to get started and import the Azure library. So you can do that. Any other questions at all? We've obviously been talking a lot about Azure Automation, but like we showed like over 3,000 commands and all those modules. You can do like get AzureRM VM and I don't want tab complete.
So if you show us 20 commands per user group, I think we got you booked for the next 10 years.
Yeah. Oh, I'm logged into the wrong way here. So go get it.
No, that's really great. We really appreciate your time. If the people here or the people that watch this later want to find you or find some of your work, what are you working on, or what resources? You want
I threw it up on the screen again. The best way to contact me is on Twitter at Mr. Thomas Rayner. You can also message me on LinkedIn. I think it's open. I accept any connection that comes my way. So if you can't message me out of the gate, connect and you can message me privately there. My blog, workingsysadmin.com. I am posting weekly every Wednesday morning. You'll see something from me there. And you can find me in the Slack as well in PowerShell.slack.com, or I'm pretty sure it's slack.poshcode.org.
Yep.
That's probably too small for you guys to see, but you just put in your email address and it gets piped in to get invite, which should probably be new invite, not get invite. We'll have to talk to Joel about that. And then you get to join this wonderful community of people. These are just the channels I'm in. There's lots of channels for regional places. I bet there's even a Cincinnati PowerShell user group that's in there.
We don't talk.
It's very active. Can't you tell?
Hey, look, I told everyone that you were going to be there.
Yeah, I'm here now. But yeah, lots of different stuff in here. It's very active, and so it's good just for not just the Azure PowerShell stuff, but for any area of the language that you want to take a look at. Yeah, those are the best ways. I'm pretty active on Twitter. I'm pretty active in the Slack, and I respond to LinkedIn messages that are not spam. Yeah, if you want to talk to me about this or anything else that's sort of in my wheelhouse, I'm more than happy to do that. Otherwise, I hope you guys enjoyed the session and picked up at least a couple of things that could be helpful for you. It's kind of tough to do a level setting thing when the level's unknown, but
no.
Are any of you guys even using Azure?
A bit, yeah.
Yeah, we have a few. We have
that would have been a good question to open with.
Azure a little bit, I think, too.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. No, it was really helpful. We really appreciate your time, and I guess with that, unless there's any more questions, thanks a lot, Thomas. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.